Well, mainly, I mean, I'm a geologist. I'm a proud, happy geologist. I wouldn't change that if I was to repeat my life. But, you know, I guess just to back up a little bit, I was born in Vancouver, and UBC, the University of British Columbia, is a good school for geology. I had a wonderful 4 years there, broken up by a year in climbing mountains in South America. And then I worked in Namibia. I worked with Texas Gulf for a summer, and I really got to know why people like Africa, the game and the beauty of the continent. And coming back home through London, I visited the Royal School of Mines, and I thought it was a pretty cool place, and I applied for a position to get a master's in mining geology there, and I was accepted. So I came to London, and I had a wonderful year here. Spent another year in Asia, tramping about with a backpack and half a change of clothes, and climbing more mountains in Nepal, and generally living like a vagabond for a year. Then I returned to Vancouver at the end of August, and you know, it was either go to the bush after having been away 3 of the previous 4 years, or go back to school and do something different than geology. It was a PhD or an MBA or something like that. And you know, I figured, well, what's the exact opposite to geology? And it's law. It's instead of a natural world, it's a human-created world. No good geologist has a clue about how human society really functions in this weird, you know, created world of legislation and common law. And so I thought, well, you know, I wasn't ready to finish studying, and I went into law school and spent 3 dreadful years. I absolutely hated it. It was more of a hobby for me. But you know, I was young. I was in my mid-20s, and a lot of great parties, a lot of great relationships, and so I had a lot of fun. But I was never planning to be a lawyer. But you know, if you think about it, geology and law, you know, they're kind of similar because geologists dig up dirt, and lawyers spread it around. So you know, there is a kind of a connection there. Anyway, I never practiced a day in my life. Is law useful as a geologist? Not really. But it's probably pretty good as a business training. You know, you learn how things work. You learn about permits and title and you know, corporate situations, joint ventures, contracts. So I guess it's hard to say if it's helped or hindered, but it probably hasn't hurt. So it was a kind of an interesting mix, but really I'm mostly a geologist, and I think it's a great profession. And if I ever talk to young people, I say, you know, be a geologist. You'll be happy. Well, I mean, we could both do it. It's just, yeah, I mean, electric cars use how much more copper than regular cars?
4x.
Thank you, 4x. Yeah. How much more copper do wind farms use?
Offshore's 10x, onshore 5x.
How about solar panels?
It depends on the type of configuration, 4x, 5x.
Yeah, I mean, it's copper is used. Copper is as much an energy metal as oil, or copper is as much an energy commodity as oil. If you think about copper, it's the generation. That's what makes electricity, a moving wire in a create a magnet. And copper is used in electricity transmission. Copper is used in electricity end use. Every single motor uses copper. The more motors, the more copper demand. And so it's really an energy metal. Silver now is becoming an energy metal. Lithium, we all know, is an energy metal. But there's other ones like manganese, aluminum, even lowly iron. These are all metals that can produce really good large storage batteries, which is the kind of state of play right now for that's the cutting edge of where we're going with renewable energy. The problem with wind and hydro and solar, run-of-river hydro especially, but the big problem with wind and solar is the intermittency, and you solve that with a good storage battery. So the problem in storage batteries is cost. It has to be low cost to work, and you can't use expensive metals like cobalt. If you're going to build huge storage batteries, you've got to use other metals. So you can use iron, you can use sulfur, you can use manganese, aluminum. These are much lower cost, maybe vanadium. And this is all going to really transform an awful lot of metals markets when those batteries become really utility scale. Saudi Arabia right now, I mean, the most stunning announcement was their announcement about 2 weeks ago of approving a 200 gigawatt. The numbers are so staggering, I can't even imagine it. Solar farm in Saudi Arabia. 200 gigawatts, to put that into context, British Columbia uses about 12 gigawatts, the whole province, 3 million people. Canada uses about 140 gigawatts. So in one solar farm in Saudi Arabia, they're going to generate more electricity than the entire country of Canada uses. It's just a staggering number. It's going to cost about $200 billion, and this is part of their energy shift. Well, if the biggest petroleum producer in the world is doing this kind of thing, I think it's a fair assumption that this is going to be the direction of the whole world. And what metals those use, copper, silver, all those other metals that are being used in that solar farm, it's going to fuel new mines in many places.
The last time Ross was really involved with a company was a success story called Lumina Copper. And if we tell you a quick story in Chile. I was in Chile recently, and I sat down with some gentlemen who know the business very well, and Ross Beaty was vagabonding in Chile in the early 2000s, and he wanted to acquire copper projects. You recall?
Vagabonding?
Vagabonding, traveling. And copper was at an all-time low. And these people finally said, Ross, why are you buying these projects? These are not economic. And Ross said, well, basically, I believe China's growing and the copper price will increase. My team will enhance the value of these projects and we'll be selling them back to you in about 10 years. He was wrong. He sold most of those projects within 5 years. And that was an example of a company that you were very involved with. Maybe just articulate the Lumina Copper experience.
You know, it's a pretty simple, it's so easy to say and it's so hard to do. Buy low, sell high. Have you ever heard that before? Buy low, sell high. When no one else thinks anything is worth anything, and I'm talking metal, I'm talking commodity markets really, which are cyclical. That's when you want to be buying, when no one else wants them. So I went around and bought about 10 big copper deposits, and I remember, I was telling somebody yesterday, I remember at a show, and we took a company public in 2003, and the first investment conference we went to was in January 2004 at Vancouver, one of the Vancouver investment conferences. And I was standing at our booth for Lumina Copper. We had everything in that one company, and the chief geologist of the world's largest publicly traded copper company, Phelps Dodge, a guy named Bill Williams, he was behind me, and an investor was talking to him, and the investor said, oh, should we look at investing in that Lumina Copper? I heard they have a bunch of copper. And Bill Williams said, oh, no, that's just other companies' garbage. And actually at that time it was true, because it had no value. It had zero value. The copper price was about 80 cents a pound, and all of these deposits, they were worthless at that price. But over the next 5 or 6 years, we sold all of the properties for about $2 billion, all cash, and we'd invested about $160 million to get to that $2 billion value. So that was some garbage. If that's garbage, bring it on. But the lesson to me is actually applicable today, and that's really in the gold space. We've actually had a pretty good move in copper, and most of the copper equities have doubled or tripled. It's been a pretty decent market in some metals, zinc certainly, cobalt of course, lithium. We've seen pretty good moves in the last couple of years, right? The low is about January 2016. Things have bounced pretty nicely, but today in the gold business, and really that's kind of where I'm principally focused today. We have this weird situation today that I can say I've rarely experienced in my entire career. It's very odd, and it's unnatural, and therefore it will not be sustainable. But the gold equities have gone down, especially in the last year or so. And so when the gold price goes up and the gold equities go down, something weird is happening. Unless you believe that gold prices are going down, which I don't, the equilibration will be that gold equities will rise, and probably smartly when something happens. So just like in 2003, when copper was on the floor, everybody thought copper was dead. But if you look at a chart, any chart of going back 50 years, you can see the cyclicity of these commodities, and gold is no different. It is a cyclical world we live in. There are times to buy and there are times to sell. Today is a great time to buy. right now.